We are looking at Gracie Vanderbilt, just swam over from Catalina Island. Here we are on Swami Beach. She's coming in, and we are going to interview her and find out what it takes to swim 100 miles. Check her out. Good work. You just swam over from Catalina Island?
We did.
We get a hug?
Oh, yeah.
SpartanUpPodcast.com. We're here in Pittsfield. We've got non-expert Navy diver.
No.
Colonel Knight.
No,
All right.
civilian.
You'll understand in a
Civilian
minute.
diver.
We've got Johnny the Doctor, and we've got Wilderness Wild Woman Pond Wine-driven night swimmer.
Wine. Wine and pond swimming.
To our left. We interviewed Gracie Vanderbilt in this episode, and she is awesome. She swam 100 miles. She swam from, separately, she swam from Canada to Vermont. Wow. She goes out late at night, miles offshore, in the dark, and gets it done. Somehow she harnesses that fear. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's incredible. There's so many things that people say, I don't want to be afraid of. Spiders don't be afraid of. There's some things you can't not be afraid of. I mean, you should be afraid of swimming late at night. It's there are inherent risks. And yet you keep finding these people, you bump into them all over the world who do these things. You know, we talked about the business leader who runs into a failing company. There's fear in that, right? And yet we keep meeting these people who embrace that fear and do incredible things. That's a great example of this, where she's found a way to do it anyway. And I think that's what's so inspiring and why it elevates the rest of us to know about it.
Now, unlike us, you've dived. You dove.
You dived, but you have driven?
I was like, did he dive once, twice? Dove? Okay, you dove at night, 100 feet down.
Well, listen, we were on a dive cruise, my wife and I, over in Australia years ago. And
so you had us thinking special forces.
No, I was saying no very clearly. Anyway, that is a true test, though. When you go down at night into the abyss and you go down anything past 70, 80 feet, it is pitch dark. Yeah. And even the little light they get on you, it's just focused. You're only seeing this much, so you have no idea what's on your left or right limit. And it is all about focus, and it is all about harnessing your fear and to keep going.
And the funny thing, when she's swimming, obviously she's trying to stay at the surface, but you still have 70, 80 feet in your mind when you start to sink.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
You don't want to go down there. And, for most of us, we don't want to think what's down there either when we're swimming at night. That's the other thing that gets people freaked out.
Any little thing that bumps into you or becomes big in your mind.
I don't know. You guys just sound like a bunch of wusses in the water. I mean, I like swimming at night. Can you?
Right,
I mean,
so you went
everyone has.
You had a glass of wine in the woods. Big
some
deal.
tadpole is going to come touch you.
I love the stories you create in your head. You take a little tiny snippet, and all of a sudden he's got full gear on, and she's
no, it's funny
he's
though,
out fighting for the country. You are floating
in
on
Australia.
Not in Australia.
No. I mean, look, I went. We were in Thailand. We swam around this point with two of my guy friends. One of them ended up being so petrified because he thought there were sharks that I had to walk him back mountainside around. And I don't know. You either let fear take over your brain. There's a parable. There's fear. There's a monster that's fear, and the monster that's good. And you say which one wins, whichever one you feed. Right? If you feed the fear, you give in to fear.
Now let's see what Gracie has to say.
Let's see what Gracie has to say.
So we're here on Swami Beach. That's how you call it, Swami Beach? Swami's Beach with Gracie Vanderbilt, swimmer to the stars. Is there anybody that swims as far as you do? Is there anybody out there?
There's plenty.
Really? 10 people? How many globally that can
There's not that many.
Not even 10?
We're a small group, but there are a few of us.
I mean, you could swim to Cuba if you wanted to. Would that be an issue?
I'd like to one day, maybe.
How many miles is
It's 100.
It's 100. You've done 120, so that would be like breakfast.
Maybe, yeah. Jellyfish try to make that a little bit more difficult, so.
Well, that's a good question. What's the toughest thing about it? Is it I mean, once you get in your zone, are you able to just go forever? Does it feel like you can just keep going?
I do. The thing that I love about it is that I think I am my most authentic self when I'm able to let go and be in that zone and just keep going. Yeah, regardless of what comes, just keep going and just taking it one stroke at a time.
Right. You never think to yourself, because we talked to a Navy SEAL recently, and he said he's got to do it in bite-sized pieces. He doesn't. Do you think I'm doing 120 miles, or do you think I just got to get through the next half hour?
I just got to get through the next half hour, got to get through the next stroke. I think the worst thing you can do in any sort of endurance or any real test of yourself is start projecting. The minute you start projecting of what's going to happen, you know, an hour from now or 10 hours from now or the future, you're living in the future and you're not living in the now and the present, and that's key.
That's interesting. I've never heard it quite said that way before. So we got to live in the now. So, so you don't get hungry? Do you eat? What do you do?
I have a kayaker, usually, or a boat that follows me, and in endurance swimming we call it a feed. You know, and it's a little less glamorous than calling it eating. So yeah, I have these water bottles and they've got a rope, and I'll just keep swimming. When it's time to go, they'll hold it up, and then I'll roll over on my back, grab it, drink, drop, and then just keep going.
It doesn't screw up your stomach?
No.
Just
I got my nutrition nailed, so Carbo Pro all the way.
Carbo Pro.
Yeah.
It sounds like a sponsor.
It is.
How many? How long do you go between feedings?
I feed every 30 minutes, and I take in about 350 calories per hour.
350 an hour. And the furthest you've ever gone is 120, which was how many hours?
That was a stage race, so it was a Tour de France style racing. So it was 7 days, it was 8 bridges. It was from upstate New York, from the Rip Van Winkle, and I swam all the way down to the Verrazano.
Wow.
Yeah.
How was the water? Was pretty dirty, or?
You know, the Hudson was incredible. The Hudson was beautiful. Like, I gotta say, especially the upper Hudson was just incredible. Swimming around Bannerman's Island, like, that was awesome, knowing that it's kind of haunted and stuff. I mean, it's a castle in the middle of the river. And then I think my favorite part of that was coming around West Point. The chaplain at West Point knew that we were out there and started firing the cannon.
Oh, wow.
And that was just insane. That was
How
super
many
cool.
swimmers were out there when you did that?
There weren't that many. I think there was about 5. Only 2 of us attempted the whole thing and finished that year.
Nice
Yeah.
work. And have other people ever finished it before? Or?
I was the first with my friend Rondi Davies from New York, and then a guy, Andrew Malinak, did it this time. So there's only been 3 people to ever complete it.
Ever do it. So people like you just don't pop out of nowhere. How did it happen? How were you forged? How were you made? Did you have a super dad, or?
I did. I had 2 super parents. My dad was a Navy guy. He was a diver in the Navy. And and my mom, she was a competitive sailor, and I just think we're made that way, you know? I just like finding that next challenge. I like finding where the line is, finding what makes me tick, and seeing if I can go a little further.
What did childhood look like? You're 4 or 5 years old. What are you doing?
Swimming, playing football. I had an obstacle course in my backyard. Yeah, it was great.
And did they push it, or you just
They
saw
did.
it?
You know, I think every kid's different. I was a kid that liked to be pushed, and the more I was pushed, the further I would try to find that I could go. So it was good.
And then you went on a swim team
I joined swimming at 2,
wow.
and then I've been swimming my whole life, yeah.
And you don't get bored? Like, you see a lot of football players or soccer players or whatever, they get tired and then they don't want to.
I think burnout or boredom comes from not setting good goals. I really do. I think, like, at this point in my life, I've realized that whenever you when you're only growing, you know, vertically, and you're not growing horizontally, you're not able to stretch. It's like pulling a piece of gum. When you just try to pull gum this way, it's going to break. But if you pull this way and then pull this way, it's got unlimited growth. So I think that's the key, is finding ways to grow that aren't just vertical.
And so give me an example in swimming. Vertical, just growing vertically would be?
So just growing vertically I just swam in the pool. I was a national level pool swimmer, and everything was confined to the black line and one wall to the next, and I did the conventional program, and then we moved to California, and I found the ocean, and it's just unlimited possibilities.
Yeah.
Further, farther, faster, in the dark, in the day. I mean, it's just it's unlimited ways to find out how to test myself.
So my wife and I are deathly afraid of sharks. So let's dive into swimming in the dark. What, like middle of the night, or? They know her on this.
Yeah.
They know her on the beach.
They do.
You're in the dark. What time? Like midnight?
Most of the swims, like my Catalina swim, started at midnight. The last swim I did here in Vermont, it started at midnight as well. The dark is my favorite time.
Really?
Sensory deprived. You can't see anything. You know, during the day, it's funny. During the day, your eyes are awake and you can see everything. So you have more senses that are there and kind of at play. And you're like, oh, what's that dark shadow? What's that dark shadow? But in the dark, you can't see anything. So at some point, you just have to submit to the not knowing and trust yourself and just go.
And you ever hear any terrible stories of people out there?
I've had one or two encounters, but nothing big. I did a swim last summer from La Jolla to Cardiff Reef, and I had a white shark come and buzz me, check me out, and then leave. So it was a little.
Were you submitted?
I finished the swim. I didn't get out. I had to compose myself a little bit, and then I realized it's not the shark you see you need to be afraid of, it's the one you don't see.
Right.
So then I just put my head down and finished.
Kept going. How when that happened, how much further was left of the swim?
Half the swim. I had a long way to go. I will say, though, that the rest of the swim, I swam inside the shore break.
Yeah.
And people go, come on, you need to come. I am not going out there.
What now there's technology for sharks and stuff.
Shark shields.
Shark shields. You throw anything on the kayaks? Or?
Nah, I just leave it up there. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. But I think I have a better chance of getting hit on my way to the beach than I do of the shark actually doing anything with me. So I'll take my chances.
I would say that's true if you ran statistics based on all the stats are based on people that just stay right here in the ocean. I don't know if the stats are run on people that are swimming out at midnight. You know what I mean? There's not too many people doing what you're doing. So
yeah, nobody's ever died doing a channel swim.
How many have done it?
A few, quite a few.
5?
More than 5, but none have ever died from a shark attack during a channel swim. So you're pretty safe. And swimming at night is good because sharks are sight predators, at least white sharks. So at night you're not casting a shadow.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
All right, so let's go right into this big swim you just did in Vermont. 26
miles.
Is it 26 or 26.2?
26.
26 miles, and was it just created by a race organization, or is that a standard distance? Or
it was created by a race organization. It's the Kingdom Swim. It's part of the Kingdom Swim series in Vermont, run by Phil White. And the swim started in Newport, Vermont, and we swam to Magog, Canada.
Wow. And what are water temps like in Canada?
This swim is a funny one because when I ask my friends, what's your hardest swim, this swim keeps coming up. And these are people who've done the English Channel, they've done North Channel, and the hardest swims in the world. I thought, I got to do this one. It's tough. The water temperatures can really vary. It can be in the high 50s at this time, or it can be as warm as 70.
And so what made it so tough? Let's go through the whole thing. You jump in the water. You've probably never even been to Vermont, do you?
No, this was my first trip to Vermont, which I got to say was stunning, and I want to go back now. It was like my own little personal, real-life episode of the Hunger Games. It was amazing. There was around 15 swimmers originally, and then that whittled down to the 6 that were actually going to make the start. And then out of the 6, now it's 5. One of them gets there and says, no, I'm not ready for this, drops out. And then out of the 5, we go to the start, and then this huge storm hits. And now there's only 4 of us that are going to start the next day. And then the 4 of us get for the start, and they do a staggered start so that we can close in. So I started last. And I swear it was, I stand up on the water, and it had been pretty quiet all day, and then all of a sudden it was like somebody said, turn the wind on. And the wind came up, and all of a sudden there's this wind that's 35 miles an hour in our face.
Wow.
And I was, this is crazy. Who would willingly want to start with a headwind like this? This is nuts, but this is how we do it. And it's dark, it's midnight, so we got in and started. And we had
4 of you at this point.
4 of us, yeah. I was by myself, but they all started ahead of me. And then as we go, it's pitch black, we can't see anything. My crew's never been to Vermont before, so they also had no real idea where we were going, but we just sort of trusted GPS at that stage. And as we were going, every so many hours, it was like conditions changed completely. When the lake opened up wider, the currents got stronger, and it was an even stronger headwind. Then as it got narrower, the wind died because the mountains were in the way, but now we have these crazy back eddies that were just these little whirlpools in the water, and it would take my boat 200 meters away from me, and then I would start swimming towards them, and they were, no, don't come any closer, and they had an outboard just churned up and couldn't get out of it. It was nuts.
So we've got 4.5 million people now that are trying to learn how to do stuff, probably not swim 26 miles, but whether it's a mile, 2 miles, whatever their goals are, how do they get through it? The biggest question they ask us is, how do we get motivated, right? How do we push through when things get really tough? So you do it. What advice would you give?
I think the first thing is you got to find what you're passionate about. And even if you're finding something that you like, find something that you're passionate about that, like even if it's not that particular thing. And then just really teaching those people that they have to stay in the moment, not to worry about what happens next, not to worry about what happened in the past, like just handle what's going on now and just really celebrate the journey. That's I think what really makes somebody tough. Yeah.
Yeah, so you found joy somehow in the 35-mile-an-hour headwind and not having clothes on and 30 degrees.
I wouldn't necessarily call it joy. I would say I found utter contentment. I mean, how many times in life have you ever been utterly 100% fulfilled? And in those moments, I was 100% fulfilled because I knew that I was in that moment and I was soaking in every single, everything that was happening to me physically, mentally, and emotionally, and I knew all of that was going to make me better, and all of that's going to prepare me for what comes next.
One of the big things we talk about is delaying gratification. Like in the morning, you train still. Do you need to train or?
I do.
So you wake up early in the morning, you're not feeling like it, you're just tired. What do you do to not hit the snooze button? What's your trick?
I think about what do I want my story to be like in the end? How do I want that to play out? I know that it's not worth getting into that major event and wishing that you had done more. There's nothing worse than knowing that you could have done more and you didn't.
Right. So a guy we just recently interviewed said you got to play like a pro in life, not like an amateur, and that's the way you're looking at it. You're saying, right? You're playing like a pro. Frame of reference, another big one we bring up. When I was young, I had this business and hired tons of kids, and most of the kids failed. They couldn't keep up. They didn't want to work that hard. But then I found Eastern Europeans, and they work like animals. They were working harder than me. I couldn't keep up with them. But they had a different frame of reference. They grew up in a tough place. You grew up in a beautiful place. Like, how do you set your frame of reference so that when things do get tough, you're like, this isn't so bad?
I didn't grow up here. I grew up in southern Louisiana, and
was it
life
tough?
was tough. Yeah, it wasn't easy. And there's a reason they call it the Dirty South. It doesn't come by that name lightly. But I live here now, and I teach here now, and it is tough. I celebrate when they make good choices. It's easy to take the easy way out, and that's always what's convenient. And I think a lot of times kids nowadays, and just people in general nowadays, will go for what's convenient. But I get that great opportunity to shape a mind with those young kids, and as soon as they make a choice that I know is the difficult one, but it's going to have a long-term payoff, I celebrate that, and they enjoy it, and they seem to continually make those choices because they know that it pays off and it feels good.
What percentage? How many kids do you teach?
A lot. Like in my one group, I think we have 60.
Teach 60 kids. What of the 60 kids? Which kids push and do the difficult thing?
I would say most of them, I have to say.
Really?
I think, over time, it's all about the value system, and then you can only teach them so much, but you have to inspire them to make good choices. And so I make it like my life's work to inspire them to make good choices.
Give me an example. How would you inspire 60 young kids to get in the cold water? And
by doing it myself, saying what I do and doing what I say.
You lead from the front.
Yes.
One thing we talk about is obstacle immunity. What I mean by that is we have these obstacles on our race course that are metaphors for life. People climb over walls, crawl under barbed wire, jump over fire. They're scary for a lot of people, right? But so are life's obstacles. But if you can get through the race obstacles, it makes life's obstacles that much easier. How would do you see that with swimming?
I do. Jumping in the water when it's pitch black and it's cold and you're fighting hypothermia or you're fighting heat, like that's your brain is everything about your brain and your insides is telling you to stop, that this is dangerous, and then you're having to talk yourself out of it and reassure yourself, no, I'm actually okay. Really, I'm okay.
And does that, for you, do you notice that makes life easier then?
Yeah, it makes me successful in life. I wouldn't necessarily say that particularly makes life easier, but it makes me more successful dealing with whatever happens to me in life, yeah.
So in the same period of time that it took you to swim 26 miles in Vermont, I swam 10. And so I'd love for you to show me how to swim, because I clearly don't know what I'm doing. You guys know I hate to waste food. I hate to waste time. And she really struck home when she said to me, there's nothing worse than knowing you could have done more in life. And for me, and you guys probably agree, right? We can't waste our time here. I don't know. Did that hit home for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. Something she said as well that sort of ties into that when she said, boredom comes from not setting good enough goals. And it's so funny. You're a person, and we're people who we just want to cram as much as we can into life, and you keep surrounding yourself with those people, and obviously it elevates us all. But there's no time for boredom in that, right? You can't be bored.
Boredom,
and,
what a ridiculous word.
Yeah, exactly. And she doesn't. She's not somebody who's ever bored. She's always setting these incredible goals. And but the other part about setting these incredible goals, some people I think are afraid to because it just seems so big, right? They'd rather play small because playing big seems like this huge commitment. And that's the other thing I really like that she said was, it's just about that next stroke, that one thing at a time. So you can take on these big projects that will make sure that you're never bored and that you never waste time in life if you break it down. So tell me about how that resonated with you when you're talking with her.
So bored is interesting. When I started my pool business back, many moons ago, I had kids that would sit next to me in the truck. I was driving, they would sit next to me, and I'd hear that from kids, like, I'm bored, I don't know what I want to do in my life. And I thought, how could that even be possible? I don't have time to breathe. I've got so much stuff to do today. I don't even understand that word. And I thought, third world countries, those people can't get bored. Who has time to get bored except when you have nothing going on, right?
Yeah.
You've got that much luxury around you, and you're that fortunate, I guess, that you don't have to work. So yeah,
Well,
A very simple explanation for that. Sorry, I'll stop. But a very simple explanation is there's no such thing as bored. There's boring. You're not bored. You're boring.
I like
If
that.
you're bored, you're boring. Stop being boring.
I
Sorry,
like
go ahead.
And I was going to say responsibility and
Yeah.
boredom are total opposites.
Yeah.
And so guys like you that take on responsibility, people, again, who are leading, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are pushing envelopes, boundaries, pushing back walls, whatever, those guys have responsibility because they want to succeed because they're taking on causes or challenges for other people. There is no time for boredom when you have responsibility, because there's whether it's just a parent having to feed his children
Or
go to
anyone.
work
Or
just
hunter-gatherers. I mean,
Right.
not to
You
be
know,
cliche, right? But they didn't have any time on their hands. They were hunting, feeding,
right.
building.
So if you're just
always-
out there
I know.
grazing,
It
as part
always
of the
has to
pack,
go back to the woods with you, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's where it all goes
why
back
she's
to,
here.
right?
but with Gracie though, something that's interesting with this, because we're talking about using your time and not being bored, and yet she puts herself in situations, and I love when she talked about that, going through the long night of swimming and having to let go to
Just
the unknown,
surrender, yeah.
because there's a component of boredom. You've run lots of ultra marathons, and I know when people ask me why I do them, and I say because there's something to be said about that second night in the woods with no one around you, where there's nothing to change the channel with. And she's obviously harnessing that, because you talk about the fear of what's in the water. There's a much bigger fear of what's in your head. The things that you just let the noise take you away from and don't have to deal with. But that second night of no sleep, and suddenly you're thinking, oh shoot, that thing that I've been trying not to think about. So
There's the
what did
brain.
she
That's
say
how
about
you
that?
work
What was
through it,
what was
right?
her quote about that? She said something about you're at your best when.
She said, let's see. She's at, when you're fully engaged, maybe.
Yeah, she said. Yeah,
When
you're,
your
you're-
most authentic self, yeah.
yeah, and also the idea about just letting go. That's the thing is
Yep.
when you really let go to the unknown. That's what it was. And you
Submit
just
to the not knowing, trust yourself, and
Just
go.
succumb. Just
Yeah.
give. Just
go.
yeah. Just
Sign
give
it.
in. I remember we put on a race up here, and a girl got lost in the woods,
Yeah.
and it was early. It was had to be 11 years ago, and she said she could keep moving once she just gave in and said, all right.
Did she get lost or just find another path?
She found another.
She's back.
Yeah,
So
but back to our subject. I thought a great quote was when she was talking about the chewing gum, and you could stretch it in one direction. So if you only have growth in one direction, you would talk to her about burnout, and if you go only in one direction, it'll snap. And so for growth, you have to go in multiple directions. You have to go wide as you do long. And
Yeah,
I think
I like
that's
that.
a great
I like that
that's
a
a
lot.
great lesson for a lot of people.
Do you find that in the military? Do you keep pigeonhole guys, or how do
Yeah,
you?
I think the military does a good job about making you switch jobs. I mean, you're only in a job for about 2 years, and you move on to something else. I mean, that's
Constantly being tested.
right. If you got that, you got it down 2 years. Okay, good. It's time to go. Just about when you think you know what you're doing.
when you look at a lot of great business leaders too, who they won't be lifelong with a company. I knew you interviewed the guy from Kodak, and the thing is, he hasn't been there forever. He finds that new challenge, gets it to where he wants it to be, and then goes and finds another company that's in that kind of need, right?
Sure.
Yeah, and I think a great positive reframe that she does is she says, "How do you want your story to be told?" And that's something that you hear over and over again. But if you actually think about it, it's a
That was a great saying. How do
Yeah,
you want
I
your
re-
story to be
yeah,
told?
I really like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
All right,
a lot of
well-
people about legacy. It's amazing. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, SpartanUpPodcast.com. You'll learn more. You can
Tell us how you want your story to be
you
told.
can deal with Colonel Nye's interactive section on the site, where
He'll be in a diving suit.
he's in a diving suit. He's always available. Dr. Johnny will chime in on the site. You'll read the show notes. You'll learn more, and
I'll be
back.
in the woods.
And Steph
She'll
will
be
be in the
off in the
woods.
woods. It's getting better and better.
In the woods.
Can't wait to the end of the season.
So.